Alright, at long last we are doing Butterbeer from Harry Potter to satisfy all of you Gryffindors and Huffledores. While the books do not give an official recipe for Butterbeer, there are a few versions out there. At Universal Studios, you can get a non-alcoholic version with cream soda that just seems way too sweet. There's also a real thing called buttered beer, which is a 16th century recipe involving butter and beer that Greg over at How to Drink made last year, and it looks really tasty. But let's see it in action at the Three Broomsticks pub.
I'd like to leave.
What? You can't be serious.
That happens to be my sister.
So? What if she looked over here and saw you snogging me? Would you expect her to get up and leave?
Hey, my boy!
Oh, so wonderful to see you.
Okay, so while JK didn't give us an official recipe, we do have a few bits of information. One, she is on the record saying that she made it up and imagines it to taste a bit like a less sticky butterscotch. We also know that there are two versions of butterbeer, one served hot and one served cold. So today I take a crack at both versions and, spoiler alert, they are delicious. Alright, let's get on with the subtle science and exact art that is cocktail making, starting with the hot butterbeer. And this is going to have three components. And for the first one, we're going to use a technique called fat washing to infuse butter into bourbon. So first, weigh out 80 grams of unsalted butter and put it into a saucepan. And then we're going to do a process called browning the butter, which is when the water boils off, leaving the milk solids behind to brown. We're going to cook it over medium heat for about 6 minutes, stirring often until the butter turns dark amber and it has a nutty aroma. It should look something like this. If it turned black, that means you've cooked it too much, and while it's not necessary to brown the butter for this, I highly recommend it. Next, we're going to combine that with 250 mils or about 8.5 ounces of our bourbon. Now everyone knows oil and water won't naturally mix on their own. The same goes true for melted butter and alcohol. We'll revisit this idea later in the video where we find a way to actually force them together. But here we're going to just leave this for about an hour, agitating it frequently. After that, you want to then put it in the freezer for at least 30 minutes. When it comes out, you should have a solid puck of butter at the top, which you can then penetrate with a knife and strain out. We're then going to run that whole thing through a coffee filter to get out all the remaining solids. This filtering process could take up to 10 minutes and in the end should yield about 7 ounces or 210 mils of our brown butter fat washed bourbon. Okay, for the second component of our butterbeer, I'm going to be making a rich spiced cider, which is going to act as the base of the cocktail. This is going to give us a bit of sweetness as well as add some of the spices that I believe belong in this warm drink. Alright, so we're going to start by dumping half a gallon or about 2 liters of apple cider into a large pot. To that we're going to add 4 whole cinnamon sticks, about a half tablespoon of whole allspice berries, about 5 or 6 whole cloves, grate some fresh nutmeg, about a teaspoon worth, split open a vanilla bean, and then using the back of the knife, scrape out all the seeds, drop them in the pot, and then also drop in the whole vanilla bean itself. We're then going to bring that to a simmer over medium heat and then cook just below a simmer for about an hour, and then we're going to use a nut milk bag or a strainer to filter all that out. It should have reduced a little bit, leaving us with about 6 cups or about 1.5 liters of our spiced apple cider. Okay, the third and final component of this drink is the beer foam itself, and here we're going to get into that butterscotch flavor by making a butterscotch foam out of butterscotch liqueur in a cream whipper. We're going to start with 3 ounces or 90 mils of our butterscotch liqueur, and you'll notice I am weighing this, and you'll see why in a second. We're then going to dilute that a bit with 2 ounces or 60 mils of water. And this is optional, but I'm also going to add about 6 drops of these cardamom bitters from Scrappy's Bitters. They're awesome. Okay, and to make this a stable foam, we're going to be using gelatin at 170 bloom strength, and it needs to be about 0.75% of the weight of the drink. Here that's going to come out to about 1.1 grams. Now this is optional, but to have a more smooth, durable bubble structure, you can add some xanthan gum, about 0.1% of the weight of the liquid. So here that's going to come out to about 0.1 grams. Alright, to make this, we're going to add about half of our liquid to the saucepan. And then we're going to drop in our gelatin, making sure not to repeat my mistake in that potions class. Alright, now we're going to dissolve that over low heat. Pour in the remaining liquid as well as the xanthan gum, and then using a hand blender, try to blend that in the saucepan, realize that's a terrible idea, and transfer it to a more appropriate vessel. Now this needs to be cooled for the gelatin to set, so then transfer it into an ice bath, and once it's cooled, we're going to then pour it into the cream whipper. Seal it tight, give it a shake in a non-suggestive manner, and then we're going to whip it with a nitrous oxide charger. Don't get any nefarious ideas here. Shake it up and then rinse and repeat with another nitrous oxide charger. The foam should come out as a light espuma rather than a thick shaving cream style texture. Alright, let's build the damn thing. So we're going to start with a warmed Irish coffee mug like we had in the movie. And we're going to add 2 ounces or 60 mils of our butter washed bourbon. Then add about 4 ounces or 120 mils of our hot spiced apple cider. Give that a quick stir, and then we're going to top it with our butterscotch foam. I don't know guys, I think we nailed the presentation here. Let's compare it to what we see in the movie, and yeah, pretty spot on. But what really matters is how does it taste, and Merlin's Beard, that is delicious. Right away you get that butterscotch flavor, but it's not too sweet and overpowering, followed by some of the spicy apple notes, and that brown butter bourbon you can really still taste. It's nutty and buttery without coating your mouth in oil at all. This is really fantastic. Now normally that would be a wrap, but I feel like I gotta give some love to the muggles who really wanted an actual beer in this recipe, so buckle up because we're about to bottle fame and brew glory. This version's gonna include a winter ale, as well as this delicious butter syrup emulsification. So what is an emulsification? Well, if you remember from the last cocktail, we saw how oils and watery liquids don't tend to like to mix together. But using something called an emulsifier can force them to mix together. So here I'm going to make an adaptation of a Dave Arnold recipe to make a stable butter syrup. Alright, so we're going to start by measuring out 75 grams of unsalted butter, melt it down, and then set it aside. Then we're going to spice up some water. So in a separate saucepan, add 100 milliliters of water, throw in a cinnamon stick, a whole clove, shave in a little bit of nutmeg, and then maybe 4 or 5 allspice berries. Then using a rubber-tipped or wooden muddler, we're then going to crush up that allspice. Let that simmer for about 5 minutes, strain out all the spices, and you'll be left with this spiced water. Into that we're going to weigh out 1.4 grams of gum arabic, which is an emulsifier made from tree sap. So we're just going to blend that in using a hand blender. And then 0.2 grams of xanthan gum, which is a stabilizer that protects the emulsion from separating. Blend that in, and then we're going to put it to work by adding in our melted butter. Blend that thick boy, and then add 100 grams of granulated sugar, blend that up, bottle it, and then you can store it in the fridge for a couple weeks. Alright, we're ready to build our drink, so I've got a glass here that's about 13.5 ounce capacity, and I'm just going to pour in a bottle of winter ale. Then we're going to measure out 1 ounce of our butter syrup and just pour it over the top, and let's see if we can salvage this. No. Alright, let's try this again, but reverse the order of operations. 1 ounce or 30 mils of the butter syrup in the glass. Before we add the beer, I think this would really benefit from some funky pot still rum. So here I'm using one from Jamaica, 1 ounce or 30 mils. And then, very carefully, we're going to tilt the glass and add our winter ale. The butter syrup is causing a lot of nucleation points, which is causing this again to almost overflow. Saved it. Give that a quick little stir, and I think that's looking pretty awesome. Nice, thick, and creamy. Sort of a Guinness cascade effect going on there, but let's see how it tastes. Cheers. Okay, this is also excellent. It's rich without being too heavy, the butter flavor is really there, but it's not too sweet, and the spices really complement the winter ale. That butter syrup gives it some nice butterscotch notes, and the emulsion stays together really well throughout the life of this drink. Now I'm just waiting for JK to post a tweet retconning Dumbledore as a transgender mixologist who came up with this exact recipe, and that'll make it official. But too many of these butterbeers and you'll be way out of shape for your Quidditch match. To prevent that, you're gonna need to stay active this winter, and so I am really excited to be sponsored by Rhone for this video, which makes amazing activewear for men. Everything I've gotten from Rhone has been really durable, really comfortable, and looks great. In addition to their top-rated training gear, they also engineer elevated clothing that blends corner office class with sweatpant comfort. And their commuter collection is like the superhero version of everyday workwear. They offer everything from pants, dress shirts, polos, and vests. Everything here is lightweight, comfortable, and wrinkle-free. Here I'm rocking the quarter zip pullover, and I love this thing. It's mesh, it's breathable, it gives me total flexibility on camera. And right now they're doing a promotion where if you visit rhone.com/cocktail and use promo code cocktail, you get 20% off your first purchase. Big thanks again to Rhone for supporting the channel, and thank you for watching this episode. As always, you can find full recipes and links to the equipment on my website, and for patrons, I've uploaded a bonus video on how to get more mileage out of that brown butter bourbon in a delicious vanilla buttered old fashioned.